The flat smelled as usual of mild despair, stale cigarette smoke, and Trix's expensive, if slightly synthetic, vanilla body spray. Benji was attempting to locate the television remote, a quest usually complicated by the fact that he hadn't cleaned the flat since the Queen's Jubilee. Trix, have you seen the telly clicker? I need to know which MP has been caught with his trousers down this time. It settles me. Trix, dressed in a silk slip that suggested she was either about to receive an investment banker or simply needed to do laundry, was perched precariously on the armrest of the settee, filing her already perfect nails. Benji, you haven't seen it because the settee is currently occupied by the human equivalent of a distressed steamer trunk. Benji finally looked properly at the settee. It wasn't just cluttered with old takeaway boxes and dubious blankets, as was tradition. Beneath the faded, floral throw was, undeniably, a person. A very large, very still person. Right, Benji said, a slow recognition dawning. She's still here, then. She's not still here, Benji. She has achieved quantum entanglement with the furniture. She is the settee now. I couldn't even get her to move when I needed to locate the good vibrator, and that thing has a mortgage to pay. The occupant was Margarita, a woman of significant bulk and entirely indeterminate age, who had simply appeared 3 days ago, asking for water and stating, in heavily accented Spanish, that she was very tired. She had been asleep ever since. I offered her a digestive biscuit yesterday. Trix. She didn't even twitch. Trix sighed. Benji, you need to understand the logistics here. My income stream depends on maintaining a certain aesthetic, a sort of post-industrial glamour, not on having a passive, snoring land whale providing unwanted footrests. Don't call her that, Benji mumbled, instantly feeling protective, despite having been unable to determine if Margarita was merely resting or actively comatose. She's an immigrant. Trix, we have to be sensitive. She might be a political statement, an act of protest against the cruelty of borders. Benji, you are an ex-hospital porter who treats the inside of his stomach like a toxic waste dump. You are proudly sexless, which means you have zero interest in the mechanics of human consequence. This isn't a political statement, it's an infestation. She's taking up 90% of the communal surface area, and she smells vaguely of lime and deep-fried regret. Benji shuffled his feet. Well, I can't just shift her, can I? That's assault. Maybe she's just waiting for the right moment. Maybe she's an undercover inspector checking our adherence to the Housing Act of 1985. Trix stared at him. Dark eyes narrowed. The Housing Act of 1985. Benji, we've got 4 grams of questionable crystal hidden in the cistern and a landlord who thinks mold is a feature of the British climate. We stopped adhering to the law the moment we signed the lease. Life began to revolve around Margarita. She was a massive, silent anchor in their chaotic existence. Benji, fueled by a mixture of cheap vodka and a moral compass that sometimes briefly pointed north, continued his attempts at charity. He'd leave small bowls of crisps or lukewarm tea on the floor beside her. Trix would kick them over. It's the principle. Trix, the innate British requirement to make sure guests are comfortable, even if they have achieved a state of catatonia on your furniture. The principle is that she's costing me money. I had to turn away a barrister from Blackfriars because he said the heavy breathing was distracting. This is unacceptable overhead. Benji, I need to know if she plans on filing a W-2 or if I need to start charging her a nightly rate. Their primary activity became hypothesizing over her backstory. She's a spy, Trix declared one evening, counting a wad of cash with practiced ease. A deep cover agent waiting for the signal. She's a performance artist, Benji countered, nursing a pint of indeterminate liquid. A living monument to the global failure of social mobility. It's genius, really. She hasn't spoken a word, yet the critique is deafening. Shut up, Benji. Your critique is always deafening, and it usually involves you crying in the shower. She's probably a runaway bride. Mexican weddings are very stressful, I hear. Meanwhile, Margarita remained a statue, occasionally stirring just enough to prove she was still breathing, confirming that they were still, technically, complicit in harboring an international trespasser. Benji found this deeply worrying. Trix found it deeply annoying. I'm going to lose my mind, Trix hissed on day 6. She's using all the good blankets, and I know she peed a little. I just know it. It's probably just condensation, Benji offered weakly. No, that's the smell of bureaucratic failure, Benji, and it's settling into the upholstery. If she doesn't move tomorrow, I'm calling the Spanish embassy. She's Mexican. Tricks, it's the same continent. Close enough for bureaucracy. It was early Monday morning. Benji had just woken up, the inside of his mouth feeling like a sock full of sand. He stumbled into the living room, heading straight for the kettle, ignoring the dark lump on the sofa out of habit. Morning. You silent. Political statement. Benji muttered, flicking the kettle on. I've gone slightly off the boil, myself, actually, but you know. Keep up the good work. He wandered back to the settee, intending to retrieve a forgotten lighter. He paused. Margarita was still, too still. Her position hadn't shifted, but something fundamental had changed. The small, rhythmic, if heavy, rise and fall of her chest was absent. The subtle condensation on the window pane nearest her face was gone. The smell, which had been a rich, yeasty mix of stale human and old corn chips, had shifted to something sharper, colder. Benji nudged her foot gently with his worn slipper. Margarita, tea. I've gone slightly upmarket today. Got a bit of the proper stuff, not the knockoff. No response. He pressed a finger tentatively against her wrist, the one visible below the stained hem of her shirt. It was cool, unresponsive. Benji pulled his hand back as if burned, clutching his chest. His heart hammered in a sudden, alarming rhythm that had nothing to do with last night's stimulant intake. Oh, bloody hell, he whispered. Oh, bloody hell. Trix emerged from her bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes, looking impossibly glamorous even in distress. What? Did you finally manage to flush the toilet? Benji pointed a trembling finger at the settee. I think. She's stopped protesting. Trix walked over, peered down at the motionless woman, and sighed deeply. A long, melodramatic sigh that suggested Margarita had committed the ultimate breach of flat etiquette. Well, that's just rude. Trix circled the sofa 3 times. Benji was frozen, leaning against the doorframe, trying to decide if he needed to vomit or scream. Okay, Benji, focus. This is bad. This is Californian bad, which means it's exponentially worse than British bad. But she's dead. We have to call the authorities. We have a civic duty, Benji stammered, pulling out his phone. Trix snatched the phone from him. Put that down, you idiot. Use your addict brain for 5 seconds. What happens when the police come? Benji blinked. They take the body, they fill out forms. No. First, they ask why we haven't paid the council tax. Second, they notice the 4 empty bottles of industrial bleach we use to clean up after certain messy clients. Third, they see your stash. And fourth, they wonder why an undocumented lady from Tijuana conveniently dropped dead on our only piece of furniture. They'll think we killed her precisely. We'll be in joint custody before lunch. Benji. And I hate the color orange. The reality settled over Benji like a damp shroud. A corpse was a logistical impossibility. A dead, foreign corpse was a one-way ticket to prison, which had a terrible record for both quality street drugs and sexless living. So what do we do? Benji squeaked. Trix, ever the pragmatist, was already in problem-solving mode. She grabbed a tape measure and knelt beside the deceased. First, we need dimensions. She's surprisingly sturdy. Second, we need to know the cause of death. You were a hospital porter, right? Poked her. I am not poking the dead immigrant. Relax. It's not necrophilia, Benji. It's triage. Just tell me if you see any obvious stab wounds or explosive devices. Benji cautiously leaned closer. No. She looks peaceful and heavy. Very, very heavy. Trix stood up, tapping her chin thoughtfully. Okay. This is an immediate cash flow problem. We can't have clients here. We can't sell the settee. And we absolutely cannot call the police. We need to dispose of Margarita before rigor mortis makes her structurally impossible to move. Dispose of her? Like, put her in the recycling? No, not the recycling, Benji. The council are very strict about waste separation. The immediate goal was concealment. They wrapped Margarita tightly in the floral settee throw, her shroud being, ironically, the only nice thing they owned. She's huge. Trix, we can't lift her. We'd need a pulley system and a strong man. Which reminds me, do you have any appointments later? Stop thinking about sex, Benji. This is serious. We need mobility. You told me you used to move bodies at the hospital. How did you do it? Benji rummaged through the chaotic storage cupboard. The hospital had a little trolley. Stainless steel. Very hygienic. We, however, have this. He pulled out an ancient, rusted luggage cart with 2 squeaky wheels, salvaged from a skip years ago. Perfect, Trix said, her eyes gleaming with manic resignation. It begins now. The plan, formulated over several lines of low-grade cocaine and 3 cans of lukewarm cider, was simple. Package Margarita in large refuse sacks, transport her stealthily to the abandoned industrial site near the canal, and leave her there. A tragic, unexplained London mystery. The sheer effort of rolling Margarita onto the luggage cart nearly caused Benji a hernia and Trix a nervous breakdown. I told you she was solid, Benji. She's denser than a black hole of common sense, Trix yelled, sweat plastering the silk to her skin. She's achieved the density of regret. Trix, push. Damn you. Push, the cart groaned in protest. Finally, they had the body secured, covered by a tarp, resembling an oversized, poorly tied Christmas present. At 2 a.m., the streets of East London were generally quiet, save for the occasional drunken shout or the rhythmic thump of a far-off rave. Benji, staggering under the weight of the cart handle, was dressed in a massive woolen coat, in August, to hide his tremors. Trix, wearing sunglasses despite the dark, dictated the route. Stay close to the walls, Benji. Look casual. Think I am merely transporting a heavily weighted, corpse-sized delivery to an unknown recipient in the dead of night. I'm terrified. Trix, I feel like the ghost of unpaid council tax is following me. You're fine. The drugs are helping. Right, very much so. I keep thinking the pavement is waving at me. They rounded a corner onto a dark street, the wheels of the luggage cart squeaking a piercing, high-pitched tune that seemed to amplify their sheer guilt. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the shadows. Oi, what you got there? Benji froze, his heart seizing. Trix, however, immediately slipped back into her professional persona. A young man, clearly drunk and carrying a half-eaten chicken wing, stumbled into view. Trix stepped forward, blocking the view of the lumpy cart. She gave the man her most dazzling, transactional smile. Hello, handsome. Just moving some industrial equipment. Expensive stuff, you know. Private job. The man squinted at her, then up and down her glamorous figure, entirely disregarding Benji and the cart. Right. You look like expensive stuff yourself. Where you heading? Trix winked. Somewhere private. And I charge by the hour. Do you like a girl who handles heavy lifting? Benji watched in horrified admiration as Trix effortlessly diverted the situation from murder cover-up to potential sales pitch. The man, utterly charmed and severely inebriated, forgot entirely about the strange, bulky load on the cart. I like that very much. The man slurred. Very much indeed. Good. Benji, go ahead. I'll just be a minute. Remember what I said about the industrial site entrance? Benji pushed the cart away, shaking his head. Trix was already negotiating the terms of her service, the ultimate distraction from a body disposal operation. Benji reached the perimeter of the abandoned warehouse, a crumbling brick structure overlooking a murky, dark stretch of the canal. The air here was damp, metallic, and smelled of low tide and forgotten history. He wrestled the luggage cart across the uneven ground. It was now or never. He slowly and painfully removed the heavy bundle from the cart, positioning it precariously on the edge of the canal wall. He looked down at the dark, swirling water. It felt wrong, but necessary. Look, Margarita, Benji whispered, tearing up slightly. I'm sorry. You were lovely, and you made the settee very warm. Maybe you were a political protest after all. Maybe this is the only viable solution to the housing crisis. He gave one enormous push. The body hit the water with a sickening thump, followed by a dense, prolonged gurgle, then silence. The water quickly settled, taking Margarita entirely out of sight. Benji stood there for a full minute, shivering, despite the summer air. He heard Trix's heels clicking on the pavement behind him. She looked slightly disheveled but satisfied, adjusting her sunglasses. Done? She asked, nodding towards the water. Gone, Benji confirmed, his voice raw. Trix looked out at the canal. Well, that was stressful, and it ruined my good silk slip. She clapped Benji lightly on the shoulder. Good work. Now, let's get back. I need a shower, you need a drink, and we need to burn that cursed settee and blame the smell on the kebab shop. They turned and walked back toward the lights, leaving the luggage cart and the dark water behind. You know, Benji, Trix mused, leaning on him heavily. For a sexless drug addict who cries in the shower, you proved surprisingly adept at managing a large-scale international crisis. Benji felt a fleeting spike of pride, quickly followed by a dull wave of nausea. Thanks, Trix. You know, I think I've earned a celebratory shot of industrial cleaning fluid. No, not yet, Trix said, stopping dead outside the flat door. She turned, suddenly serious. We need to address the real problem now. The guilt, Benji asked. The inevitable police investigation. No, you idiot. The mortgage is due, and now we don't have a settee to generate any income. We need to buy a new one, immediately. And this time, absolutely no free accommodation for silent protesting strangers.